Look, I'm not going to beat around the bush today. Some of these builds are simply broken, and I love every single one of them. Esoteric Ebb gives you 27 points, 6 attributes, and total freedom to build your character exactly how you want. Balanced? Sure, it works, but that's not what today is about. Today is about the builds that make the game feel unfair. The ones that make you hope for more dialogue checks, just so you can pass every single one of them. So let's get to it. The top 10 most overpowered builds in Esoteric Ebb. Opening our ranking in 10th place, we have the Balanced Philosopher, a perfect choice for those who want to absorb Esoteric Ebb's narrative, but struggle significantly in direct confrontations. This build focuses on keeping wisdom, intelligence, and charisma at median levels to prioritize exploration and deep roleplay. It's a beautiful concept on paper, but the game punishes it in a very specific way as you progress. The big draw of this choice lies in the social interactions and the rich way you experience the game's bizarre universe. With these 3 mental attributes balanced, you easily pass basic difficulty checks and solve various mysteries using pure silver tongue tactics and arcane knowledge. It's a lot of fun to see your character extracting secrets from NPCs and having fascinating dialogues with the voices in their own mind without resorting to violence. The main reason this build sits at 10th place is that the game's point distribution system severely punishes those who don't specialize. By spreading your points equally, you lose access to powerful talents and never reach the high bonuses required for the campaign's hardest checks. When conversations fail and combat begins, the character proves to be extremely fragile, forcing you to reload the game dozens of times just to survive. I recommend the Balanced Philosopher only for those with a lot of patience who want to first play through fully immersed in world building and reading. It's a fantastic narrative experience for those who love reading every detail of the story, but the lack of specialization exacts a high mechanical price when it's time for action. If you hate getting stuck in unfair fights or hate relying on dice luck, you'd be better off checking the next positions on our list. In 9th place, we have the Lawful Stupid Cleric, a build I find genuinely fun, despite all its obvious limitations. It bets everything on strength, constitution, and charisma to create a character that is practically impossible to take down in combat, but who resolves everything through brawling and intimidation. It's the kind of character who arrives at a delicate situation, and instead of thinking simply shoulders the door open, the name Lawful Stupid says a lot about the philosophy behind this choice. You have very high survivability, can tank hits from situations that would kill any other build, and still use charisma to force NPCs to cooperate through pure intimidating presence. In terms of gameplay experience, it's incredibly satisfying to see a character like this smash through obstacles that other builds try to solve with subtlety and intelligence. The real problem arises when the game demands reasoning. Logical, arcane, and deep perception checks simply don't exist for this character, and Esoteric Ebb is full of them. You will get stuck in several important narrative situations where neither brute force nor aggressive charisma are of any use, creating moments of frustration that break the game's pacing. Community guides affectionately call this build the brute cleric, precisely because it handles half the game brilliantly and the other half very poorly. Ultimately, the Lawful Stupid Cleric takes 9th place because it's a niche build that delivers a lot in combat, but ignores a fundamental part of what makes Esoteric Ebb special. If you want an experience that is more action and less reflection, it's an honest and fun choice. But for those looking to extract the most out of every layer of the game, this build will leave you stuck in moments that should be the highlights of the adventure. In 8th place, we have the Investigator of the City Below, a build that transforms your character into a shadow sliding through the city without being noticed. Focusing on dexterity and intelligence, you build a stealthy detective who prefers to observe, analyze, and act from the shadows rather than engage in direct confrontation. It's the perfect choice for those who like feeling like the smartest person in the room, and the game rewards this in very creative ways. Now, what really makes this build stand out is the Magic Hand ability. Using your intelligence to perform thefts and interactions from a distance, you can resolve entire situations without an NPC even raising an eyebrow. There's something deeply satisfying about completing a sequence of events using only your brain and quick fingers without ever needing to draw a weapon or raise your voice. But then the game corners you and everything falls apart. Without investment in constitution or strength, any combat that couldn't be avoided becomes a desperate race for survival. Esoteric Ebb has moments where confrontation is completely unavoidable, and in those moments, you will feel firsthand how much this build was built for ideal conditions that the game doesn't always offer. That's why it sits at 8th place. It's brilliant when things go as planned, and frustrating when chaos knocks on the door. Patient and strategic players will get a lot out of it, but those who don't like calculating every move will quickly tire of this dependence on perfect conditions to function. The Strength Caretaker takes 7th place, one of the most recognized builds by the community that appears in practically all serious guides for the game. With Strength, Wisdom, and Constitution as its pillars, you build a tank that faces the world head-on, absorbs punishment, and still maintains enough clarity to navigate the harshest paths of the narrative. It's the build for the guy who runs from nothing and holds unshakable conviction in every decision he makes. What elevates this choice above the previous ones is precisely the combination of wisdom with physical attributes. While the lawful stupid cleric in 9th place bet everything on brute force without depth, the caretaker manages to pass perception and mental resistance checks without abandoning direct combat. You still brawl, but now with purpose and awareness of what you're doing, which completely changes the quality of interactions with the world. On the game's nationalist paths, this build is practically unbeatable. The character's ideology and stance fit almost surgically with the caretaker philosophy, creating a narrative coherence that very few other choices can offer. It's one of those rare cases where mechanics and story align in a way that makes everything feel intentional, as if the game were built with this exact type of character in mind. The reason it's in 7th place and not higher is that outside of the strength paths, the build starts to show gaps. Situations that require intelligence or more refined charisma leave the caretaker a bit stuck, and you'll feel that certain narrative branches have become inaccessible. It's a solid, reliable, and very fun build to play, but it still depends heavily on the game's ideological context to shine at its full potential. If you've ever wanted to play a character who resolves absolutely everything with words, this is your build. With charisma, wisdom, and intelligence working together, you become an irresistible social force that manipulates, convinces, and seduces the world around you without having to lift a finger for violence. The community has affectionately nicknamed it the social god, and the title is completely deserved. What separates this build from the balanced philosopher back in 10th place is specialization. Here, you aren't spreading points on a whim. You are building a social interaction machine with real purpose. High charisma opens doors that don't even exist for other characters. Wisdom ensures accurate reading of situations, and intelligence complements this with arguments that NPCs simply cannot refute. It's a completely different gameplay experience, where you feel like the whole world is in the palm of your hand. The problem is exactly the same as always with this type of choice. When the talking stops and the fighting starts, you are completely exposed. Esoteric Ebb has sequences where combat is forced regardless of how much charisma you have, and in those moments, the talker's physical fragility appears devastatingly. You will die to enemies that any combat build would eliminate in seconds, breaking the rhythm of an experience that had been almost perfect until then. It sits in 6th place because it delivers one of the richest narrative experiences in the game, but still trips over this dependency on avoiding combat at all costs. It's a build that requires the player to know the map and the moments of inevitable confrontation well to prepare in advance. Those who master this will have one of the most memorable playthroughs possible, but those who go in without this knowledge will feel the fragility of the choice in the worst way. This is the build for the player who wants to dominate the arcane side of Esoteric Ebb without giving up on finishing every sequence alive. With high intelligence as its core, constitution to absorb the consequences of magical failures, and wisdom to maintain a connection with the world around them, you build a character who thinks fast, casts with precision, and still holds their ground when things go wrong. Reaching the top 5 with this combination is no coincidence. It's the result of a versatility that very few other builds can offer. High intelligence here isn't just for spells. It opens a huge range of solutions for puzzles and situations that would be insurmountable walls for more physical builds. You start to see alternative paths in practically every situation, and that feeling of always having an ace up your sleeve is one of the most satisfying things Esoteric Ebb can offer. Wisdom complements this by ensuring the character isn't just smart, but also emotionally connected to what's happening around them. Constitution is what truly puts this build among the top 5 in the game. Failures happen, spells go wrong, and the game punishes mistakes directly. So having a body that can take that punishment makes all the difference in the pacing of the game. You won't be a tank, but you won't die humiliatingly to a basic enemy while trying to cast a 2nd level spell. Even so, 5th place exists for a reason. Limitations in charisma, and in situations that require pure physical strength, still appear at important moments in the campaign, and you will feel those absences. But the versatility this combination delivers is hard to ignore, and it's a build that grows as you learn the game, becoming increasingly powerful in the hands of someone who knows how to use each attribute at the exact moment. Coming in 4th place, we have the Chaos Monk, a build that doesn't show up in community meta debates, but in practice works in a surprisingly solid way. Dexterity, Constitution, and Wisdom form a combination that prioritizes speed, resistance, and situational awareness, creating a character that enters combat before everyone else, hits fast, and still has enough environmental reading to know when to retreat. It's the kind of choice that only those who have truly explored the game discover the value of. High initiative is the great differentiator of this build and cannot be underestimated. Acting first in combat in Esoteric Ebb isn't just an advantage, it's often the difference between controlling the situation and being swallowed by it. With high dexterity, you dictate the pace of every encounter, and Constitution ensures that even when the situation gets out of control, you have the margin to recover without having to desperately reload the game. Wisdom here plays a role that goes beyond combat. It keeps the character's perception sharp enough to navigate important parts of the narrative without getting completely stuck, putting the Chaos Monk in a much more comfortable position than other combat builds further down the list. You won't dominate complex dialogues, but you won't be blind to what's happening around you either. 4th place is fair, because this build delivers real consistency without depending on ideal conditions to function. It's not the most powerful or the most versatile, but it's one of the most balanced between combat and world awareness that the game offers. Those who like an aggressive and dynamic style will feel right at home here, and the surprise of discovering how well this combination works is one of the best feelings Esoteric Ebb can provide. 3rd place belongs to a build that starts modest and ends up absurd. With Constitution as its central pillar, Wisdom to navigate the narrative, and Strength to not be completely useless in early confrontations, you build a character that grows steadily until reaching the final third of the game, as a practically unstoppable force. The community calls it the Constitution Terror, and anyone who has reached the late game with this build understands exactly why. What makes this choice truly special is the progression. At the start, you'll feel like you're playing on hard mode, barely surviving, and depending on Wisdom to pass the most important checks. But as Constitution items appear and are equipped, the character begins to transform into something the game simply cannot take down. This turning point is one of the most satisfying experiences Esoteric Ebb offers for those with the patience to get there. The combination with Wisdom ensures that this tank isn't just a mindless punching bag. You have access to deep, lore-heavy dialogues, a genuine connection to the narrative, and enough perception to understand what's happening in the world around you. It's rare to find a build that combines mechanical immortality with narrative depth this way, and that is exactly what puts the late-game tank so high on the list. 3rd place exists because, despite all the late-game power, the journey there can be frustrating for less patient players. The slow start and the dependence on specific items to reach maximum potential are real limitations that prevent this build from competing for the top spot. But for those who embrace the progression and want to reach the end of the game feeling like they've built something truly powerful, this is one of the most rewarding choices on the entire list. 2nd place goes to a build that combines 3 attributes that are powerful individually and create something truly versatile together. high intelligence to master magic hand and solve puzzles, dexterity to perform thefts with surgical precision, and charisma to manipulate any NPC who dares to question your intentions. The community uses this combination in practically all Steal and Talk runs, and it's not hard to see why it became so popular. Magic Hand with high intelligence is the heart of this build and completely changes how you interact with the world. You can steal, interact, and resolve situations from a distance with an elegance that no other build can replicate. And when dexterity comes into play to complement direct physical thefts, you become a resource acquisition machine that the game can barely contain. Each new area becomes a playground where you extract everything of value before anyone notices. Charisma closes the loop in a very clever way. When a theft is discovered or when a situation needs a quick exit, you have sharp enough words to reverse any unfavorable scenario. This layer of social manipulation over a strong base of stealth and arcane intelligence is what transforms the Shadow Master into a genuine hybrid. Not a build that does everything halfway, but one that does everything competently and some things exceptionally. Second place is both deserved and fair. There is one build at the top that achieves something this one cannot. Total consistency without depending on windows of opportunity to shine. The Shadow Master still needs favorable conditions to bring out its best, and in forced combat situations, the fragility shows. But as a complete, creative, and memorable gameplay experience, it's hard to find anything more satisfying than dominating all of Esoteric Ebb without anyone seeing you coming. We've reached the top of the list with the most ambitious and technically demanding build in Esoteric Ebb. The buff machine uses strategic backgrounds to raise wisdom, intelligence, strength, and constitution simultaneously, creating a character who literally knows everything, talks to everyone, and still survives to tell the tale. It's the min-maxer's dream realized within a game that theoretically punishes those who try to do everything at once. And it's exactly this contradiction that makes this build so fascinating. The secret lies in the clever use of backgrounds to buff multiple attributes without relying exclusively on manual point distribution. When well executed, you can maintain high DCs in more than one area, access powerful feats, and still have dialogue options that would normally require total specialization in a single path. It's a build that rewards those who did their homework, studied the possible combinations, and understand exactly where each point needs to go so the system doesn't collapse. What justifies first place is completeness. No other build on the list comes close to this feeling of being prepared for anything Esoteric Ebb throws your way. Heavy combat, you can take it. Complex arcane puzzle, you solve it. Dialogue requiring deep perception, you read the room better than any NPC. This total versatility, when built correctly, transforms the experience into something that feels unfair to the game and absolutely glorious for the player. The honest caveat is that this build does not forgive construction errors. Spreading points across 4 attributes without the correct use of backgrounds is exactly what the community's most experienced guides advise against. And the line between a perfectly functioning buff machine and a glorified balanced philosopher is thinner than it seems. But when everything clicks the right way, you understand why this combination is at the top. Because no other choice in the game gives that sense of absolute mastery over every system Esoteric Ebb has to offer.